Hey everybody, welcome back to our series on close reading. The previous episode and the one that's coming after this and this one are all about reading non-written texts, reading visual texts. This particular episode is about reading photographs, and we're going to be looking for arguments in those photographs using a graphic organizer that, of course, is based on an acronym. The acronym is PHOTO. What a coincidence. So we'll get into it right after the theme song. Yes, PHOTO is our graphic organizer, our acronym for looking at photographs. There will be a link down below in the description to where you can find a blank version of this graphic organizer. But let's just dive right into it, okay? The P stands for people. If you are looking at a photograph, there are probably people in it, particularly if it's a photograph where somebody is trying to make an argument. H is for heart, the heart of the photograph. And that doesn't necessarily mean center, although often a photographer will try to get the subject of the photograph into the center, but the heart is the most important piece of the photograph. And a good clue, particularly when there are people in the photograph, is to look at the eyeballs of those people. Where are their eyeballs pointing? And that's going to give you a sense of what is important in that photograph. The first O is for outside versus inside. What is happening in the background of the photograph? That can often give you a sense of the context in which the photograph was taken, which if you remember from close reading texts, the rhetorical situation, looking at whether it's outside or inside and what the background is can really help you understanding the argument being made by the photographer. T is for thirds. There is this principle in art and photography called the rule of thirds, which is basically that any piece of art or any photograph can be made to look like a Sudoku board or a tic-tac-toe board, and important things are going to be on the vertical lines or at the intersections. I'll link to something about it below, but rule of thirds, it's a thing. And then the final O is for other things. So you've looked at who the people are and what the people are doing. You've looked for the heart of the photograph. You've considered the context in which the photograph was taken. You've sort of looked at the rule of thirds, the lines and the intersections to figure out what the photographer is trying to draw your attention to. But what else? What else is there? You can think about whether it's color or black and white. You can think about whether it is obviously cropped or is the full frame that the photographer has taken. You can even think about whether the photograph was one in a series and the photographer chose that one for a particular reason. Because remember, writers write what they write on purpose, and photographers photograph what they photograph on purpose. So let's take a look at an example. This is from January 20th, 2017. It's Inauguration Day. President Trump is being inaugurated and Barack Obama is being unpresident. I don't know what the opposite of inaugurate is. But anyway, let's think about this photograph. We'll start, of course, with the people. It's the Trumps and the Obamas. But take a look at their faces and the way they are standing. You can see in particular that the Trumps don't look particularly excited to be there, in contrast to the Obamas, who look like a happy couple. The Trumps are maintaining a shoulder width distance from each other, but Barack Obama is leaning into Michelle. What about the heart? Well, let's take a look at their eyeballs. So Donald Trump and Melania Trump kind of staring forward or slightly down, but Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are kind of looking at each other. And also, now that I've done that to the photograph, I kind of wish I had laser beams that could shoot out of my eyes. Outside or inside? This is obviously outside. It is on the Capitol steps. You can see the Capitol steps rising behind the incoming and outgoing first families. The giant chunk of marble stairs framing these two couples gives a sense of the weight and the gravity of the situation. And maybe there's a little bit to be said about the Obamas, that they are not as stately as the context calls for. Rule of thirds. Take a look at these lines. The two men, the incoming and the outgoing president, are right there on those verticals, and their faces are very, very near the intersections. Clearly, the photographer has either framed this image, taking it, or cropped it so that it appeared this way, to put the faces of the incoming and outgoing president right in the center of attention when you are looking at it. And finally, other things. Take a look at the hands and feet. The hands and feet of the Trumps. The hands are there at their side. Melania's even kind of got her fists clenched. Their legs are very, very straight. Barack and Michelle Obama, on the other hand, hands are clasped in front of them. Their legs are not straight, so they're leaning into each other. So let's think about how all of that stuff kind of comes together to make an argument. I think the most obvious argument that this photograph might be making is that the Trumps and the Obamas are feeling about this day very differently from each other. So the Obamas are smiling, they're happy, they're leaning in towards each other. Their legs are being moved, and their hands are clasped in front of them. Obviously, they look happy. They look like they love each other. They look like this is a good time for them. But the Trumps, on the other hand, they are stock still, at attention. They're stiff. They're not looking at each other. And again, Melania's got her fists clenched at her sides. They don't look happy. They don't look excited to be there. That might be the argument that this photographer is trying to make. But photos can lie. I mentioned this a little earlier, but with today's digital cameras, a photographer can take thousands of images over the course of like an hour. And even though there's an entire hour's worth of stuff that happened, the photographer can pick the one image that he or she wants to put forward in the world that is their argument. Take a look at these other photographs from the same day, right? Here, everybody looks kind of happy. Here, the Trumps look happy, Barack Obama looks happy, but Michelle Obama looks pretty salty. So you get the idea, okay? When you're looking at a photograph, you have to keep in mind that it is a single instant out of a longer piece of time. But still, I hope that this particular close reading strategy for photo, is helpful to you as you go forth and close read. I'll see you for the next one.